Must pull. It's a term used in Genshin to describe any character that can be a dramatic improvement for certain accounts, and it essentially delegates any character or weapon or any banner in particular to be worthwhile to pull for, whether you're a veteran or a new player. Now, depending on the guide you go to or the content creator, you're going to find one of two versions. It is either going to be there is no character in this game that is a must pull, just highly recommended, or they're going to outright say a character is a must pull. Some of the primary examples include Kazuha or Nahida in this instance, considering her banner is either up at the time of watching this or will be up very soon. And I think that's entirely inaccurate because I don't think any character is a must pull on one hand, but I also understand where people are coming from. I just think the big issue is if you are a new person who's getting into the game for the first time, or maybe you're someone who's just indecisive, it's very difficult to gauge how good a character legitimately is in place of the hype they have. A primary example is Kazuha. He's a unit that individuals like to mention a lot of the times being an extremely valuable pull for most people, and it's oftentimes considered for him to be a must-pull character, but nobody really explains why he's so good and in which situations he's probably not a worthwhile pull for your account. One of these instances could be that yes, he's a buffer, but if you don't have the units that are strong enough to be buffed themselves, then he's not worth it. He's great in mono elemental teams, but if your team is dependent on reactions, whether it's a vaporized team with Hu Tao or Yoimiya, or you're running Raiden Nashon or anything of that similar vein, he's not necessarily the broken, powerful unit that you would need when theoretically you can get somebody else, a buffer like Shenhe, or roll for a shielder or any other character and maybe get more value. And this is vaguely what we're seeing here with Nahida. From most sources, she is being touted as a must-pull unit, or at least extremely valuable, the closest one can possibly be to a must-pull. That being that she's one of the best characters, if not the best character in Genshin Impact at the moment. And I legitimately think that for a lot of players, even though Dendro is really good, if they don't use it, this is kind of a misrepresentation of this character. Because Nahida is great, but if you don't use Dendro, or maybe you don't need her high application of Dendro, then you theoretically have a character that you're not going to use. And if a potential unit comes out that has either equal application to her, or at least application that's relative to her own, they may be more beneficial to certain people than Nahida herself is. But overall, I don't want to just say, yeah, Nahida's bad or anything like that. I want to instead talk about what it really means for a character to be a must-pull and why we really shouldn't be using it in the first place. See, it's already difficult enough to evaluate the state of somebody's account or to even say if a unit will be good or not. An example being Hu Tao. She's a strong unit on her own, and if you utilize or have Xingqiu or just run her in Vape team, she's great. But if you have a Yoimiya, if you have a Xiangling that you built up as a DPS, if you have a Diluc or any character you built up as Pyro DPS, her value declines almost immediately. And against characters or enemies like the Thundering Manifestation, or even Weena, that value drops even more due to the range difficulty she has. If you're evaluating other units, Kokomi's value is either really high if you use her in Hyper Bloom or teams in which she can actually be of use. Whereas if you don't have any Dendro related teams, her value drops significantly because she is a healer, but she doesn't necessarily bring as many attack buffs as somebody like Bennett or Viridescent like somebody like Sayu does. Pull value is oftentimes equated to what a character can do, but pull value is even a difficult term to really discuss. Because let's be honest here, everybody has such a different preference for units they prefer, whether they're a DPS, a support, a healer, or a shielder, that discussing how much value a unit actually brings to the table is very difficult, strictly because and due to the different preferences we all have and what the end goal is. So one person may want to be a collector and just have every 5-star, another person may want to min-max their account and just max out really powerful ones, in which case units like Yelan or a Hu Tao C1 or even Raiden C3 could be extremely good units, and even Nahida with her second constellation can be great because she provides much more value to other teams. If your goal is to have enough teams or multiple teams in which you can clear Spiral Abyss with, then that may have different implications for who you want to pull for than somebody else. Many people discuss how Genshin Impact is an easy game, but a lot of people haven't cleared Abyss with 36 stars, or maybe can't clear Abyss at all and they really want to. And as such, it's very difficult to rate them and say, yeah, this character is a must pull, when realistically you have to try and look at that for yourself. Is this character really going to help somebody? Is Nahida really going to boost someone's account if they don't have the units or the teams to properly take advantage of that? And we can't recommend pulling for a unit based on future outlook. We can't say get Nahida now because she'll be useful for you in the future when we don't have a guarantee for that. We could get to Fontaine and nobody really cares about Dendro at that point because the Fontaine units are strong on their own. Or maybe they're strong in freeze teams or mono teams or anything else, even electrocharged. which can dramatically shift what happens with a character's balance. And if we're only rating units on the value they provide now, we do need to consider what are the alternatives and where they're at. Nahida is great for off-field Dendro application, but if we're being blunt here, Nahida's only real competition is the Dendro main character or Traveler and Kale. That's not very wide competition, and we know down the line that eventually we'll get more Dendro characters, and hopefully we'll get more Geo characters. And yes, they won't necessarily overtake Nahida in terms of Dendro application, but we're not really asking for that, I don't think. How similar do two characters have to be before individuals look at Nahida and say she's not worth it? Yes, she provides really good buffs with her burst and really good overworld exploration passives, and her C2 is great, but if we're sticking to C0 and somebody only wants off-field Dendro application, is she still worthwhile? And is a unit worthwhile? An example being Raiden. She restores energy, but a C6 Fischl can do something vaguely similar. Having a bunch of Favoni's weapons can do something vaguely similar. And at that point, the real question is, what does she do that other units can't? She can do Raiden National, but you can run International with essentially a variety of units, from Child to Chongyun. If we're looking at Ayaka, people say she's an extremely valuable unit, and people say she's a really good unit, and she is. But the restrictions and limitations of a character aren't mentioned unless they're overbearing. Nobody mentions how Ayaka is really just bound to freeze. She's powerful, but in one specific team comp because she can knock so many enemies away, or bosses can dodge her ults. But it is mentioned in regards to Nilo as a restrictive factor, and I don't think that's fair. Nahida's value solely lies with Dendro, and it makes her one of the weirder Archons to rate because yes, she's good in her element, she's good as a Dendro applicator, but she doesn't have much competition. The element is relatively speaking new, and her value lies inherently in how often you want to or how often you do use Dendro. And if you have Dendro main character and they're working out fine for you, then her value drops dramatically. So the term must pull. I understand where people come from when they say somebody's a must pull or somebody's really good, but I don't think we should ever be saying a character is close to or even similar to being a must pull, because it gives the wrong impression, especially to newer players. I think it's fine to say a unit is strong in their niche, but I also think that if we're going to say that, we need to preface that by also saying just how many flaws or how many potential issues you may encounter before you pull for them. And I think that would alleviate the issues we're having now, where you have so many units and so many individuals who will say Nahida and Kazuha are must pull units, or Ayaka is almost a must pull, to an extent to where it becomes very difficult to see past that and really evaluate a unit on a one-on-one basis. How strong is Nahida really? How strong is Kazuha really? Because once one person says they're a must pull and another person, you start to look at your own account, or you start to look at the other characters and think about how good something may be with them. I have Kazuha. I use him in one team and that is it, and he is benched pretty much 90% of the time. I have his signature weapon. I don't want to advise somebody else to potentially look at other characters and say, yeah, they're a must pull or they're nearly perfect when they may never use them again. I think we should value more versatility, yes, but I also think we need to consider just how oftentimes that unit is a best in slot for many different teams. And if there aren't potential scenarios that you can think of right now where a character would be a dramatic improvement and you know that for sure for pretty much every team, then I don't think the term must pull should ever be used in that context. Because a Primogem is a Primogem is a Primogem. Whether you spent money, whether you've earned it free to play, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, that it's still a Primogem, and that can be used on any character. And if you're looking at Nahida because you like her, that is an entirely different circumstance than you hating her but only pulling her because she's so strong. But I want to hear your thoughts. Who do you believe is a must pull? What do you think the issues with the pulling system is as of right now in terms of how people rate units and value them? And subscribe.